All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur and Kasparian with you guys. Unbelievably, Donald Trump is still holed up in his bunker. And almost the entire Republican Party is right there along with him. It is unreal. And do the Democrats have any fight in them? So it's the same stories, unfortunately. Round and round we go. Okay, but it's our job to correct them because nobody else will. So turn on cable news, see if anybody's furious at Joe Manchin. No, they love it. They love it. Inaction, status quo, the powerful get to keep their power and money. It's sickening. We're gonna fight back on your behalf. So let's do it. Let's do it right away. Go ahead, Anna.
All right, well, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo during a press conference today made it abundantly clear that he has already determined in his mind who won this election, even though the results based on how Americans voted says otherwise. Take a look.
There will be a smooth transition to a second Trump administration. All right, we're ready. The world is watching what's taking place here. We're gonna count all the votes. When the process is complete, there'll be electors selected. There's a process. The Constitution lays it out pretty clearly. The world should have every confidence that the transition necessary to make sure that the State Department is functional today, successful today, and successful with the president who's in office on January 20th, a minute afternoon, will also be successful. I went through a transition on the front, and I've been on the other side of this. I'm very confident that we will do all the things that are necessary to make sure that the government, the United States government, will continue to perform its national security function as we go forward.
So Mike Pompeo, a man who justifies the United States invading other countries to root out authoritarianism, is essentially enabling authoritarianism in this country and basically giving Americans a giant middle finger when it comes to the democratic process.
So every elected Republican knows that there is no credible case of voter fraud. And every elected Republican knows that even if all of Donald Trump's outlandish conspiracy theories were true, it's still not enough votes to overturn any of the state's elections. So, but they're all going along with this fiction because they're scared of the crybaby. And the baby doesn't get, and he hasn't worked out his feelings yet. And so he's in his bunker, boys in his room trying to figure out what to do with his emotions. And so while he does that, the one thing that he has revealed is the cowardice and the weakness of the Republican Party. So now we already knew that they didn't care about democracy, and they've made that clear in so many ways, and they continue to make it clear, and we've got more on that later in the program. But now we know on top, other than right now as it stands, 4 people, no one in the Republican Party has the courage to tell Donald Trump, hey, listen, you little whiner, you lost. Man up, clean yourself up, stop crying, and do what we are supposed to do in a democracy, a peaceful transition. You have no case at all. Instead, these sniveling little cowards run around pretending that he won. You think Mike Pompeo doesn't know that Donald Trump lost? You think he doesn't know that they lost every single court case that they brought? And humiliatingly so? Of course he knows that. Still, he says things like this. So the 4, by the way, are Mitt Romney. Who would have thought that Mitt Romney is the strongest guy in the Republican Party? I wouldn't have guessed that in a million years. It turns out he's way stronger than Ted Cruz or Lindsey Graham or Mitch McConnell. At least he's his own man, and he can stand up to a little baby like Donald Trump. Ben Sasse, Lisa Murkowski, and Susan Collins. Now at this point, Susan Collins won a re-election. She's not gonna be up for another 6 years. So on this one, I'll give her a little bit of credit. She's got no reason not to go along with the rest of the Republican Party. But those 4 said, no, he lost, Biden won, let's move on. Every other person in the Republican Party, cowards through and through, cheaters through and through, and they hate America. They hate this country. In this country, we have democracy, not thuggery like this.
Well, Mike Pompeo did get challenged on his statement by one of the reporters at this press conference, so let's take a look at that exchange.
So you believe there's widespread voter fraud, that the reports that we're getting from Pennsylvania, from Michigan, showing vote totals in massive leads or significant leads with 99% reporting are going to be overturned, and that the United States failed to conduct a fraudulent free election?
Rich, I'm the Secretary of State. I'm getting calls from all across the world. These people are watching our election. They understand that we have a legal process. They understand that this takes time, right? It took us 37 plus days in an election back in 2000. We conducted a successful transition then. I'm very confident that we will count, and we must count every legal vote. We must make sure that any vote that wasn't lawful ought not be counted. That dilutes your vote if it's done improperly. Got to get that right. When we get it right, we'll get it right.
They apparently can't get anything right, and they just continue to embarrass themselves. Grace Panetta, who's a reporter with Business Insider, just published a story and tweeted the following: Trump's big new election lawsuit alleges voter fraud potentially happened in 2 Pennsylvania counties. Both overwhelmingly voted for him.
He's such a loser. His main claim before this was, "They didn't let us see the ballots in Philadelphia." Now that's of course not true. That was the famous and now hilarious case where they went in and said, where the judge asked them, so were there Republican observers in the room? And Trump's lawyer had to say, there was non-zero people in the room. And the judge's like, so you're saying there were observers? And the lawyer said, yes, there were Republican observers. It's a lie. It's always been a lie. It was proven to be a lie in open court. But when Pompeo gets asked a straightforward question, are you saying that American elections are fraudulent? The whole world was watching. Are they free and fair or are they fraudulent? I don't know, we gotta look at the process. No, wait a minute. There is a process. And in 2000, where it took 37 days, as he alluded to, well, it was 500 votes in a massive state like Florida, and it was within the recount margin. In this case, is there any states within the recount margin? Yes, Georgia. Georgia's within the recount margin. So you know what they should do? They should follow the process and recount Georgia. No one has ever objected to that. Did they prove any voter fraud in Georgia? None. Who runs Georgia? Republicans do. The governor's Republican, the Secretary of State's Republican, the legislature is Republican. So did the Republicans cheat on behalf of Joe Biden? How maniacally stupid do you have to be to believe that? But it's not that they're stupid. There's 2 factors. One, they're scared of the baby. And number 2 is they think their own voters are rubes, suckers. So they think they'll believe anything we say. And it turns out they're right. Now, nearly 2/3 of Republicans say they no longer have any faith in the election system in America. Because I told you they live in a different world. And I was wondering what was gonna happen when Trump lost. And now they go, oh, well, that can't be true. Everything we know, every conservative outlet, every Republican politician told us that Trump had an overwhelming lead. So if he lost, it must be that we no longer have a democracy and they cheated in every state. So it turns out maybe they were right. Their voters are rubes. They're the biggest suckers in the country.
Yeah, and remember yesterday I shared that there were some lower level Trump administration officials, employees who have begun sending out their resumes because they realize what the reality of the situation is. And now we're learning that John McAdee, who's the director of the White House Presidential Personnel Office, is spreading the word throughout the administration that if he hears of anyone looking for another job, they'll be fired immediately. Jake Tapper, by the way, is tweeting this, and it was reported by the Associated Press earlier. The news is dismaying to many members of the Trump administration who worry especially about young staffers who will soon need other sources of income given the fact that the president did lose his reelection.
You're forcing me to do a sidebar here. So Jake Tapper, by the way, on Twitter now crying about poor Republicans who worked in the Trump administration because Democrats are saying they shouldn't be hired by other folks in DC, certainly not in the government or elsewhere, because they disgrace themselves by being against democracy. And Tapper's like, oh, but I know them in the cocktail circuit. They're such lovely Republicans. That's all fine. That's all fine. You want to say, hey, you know what? Let's blacklisting people for the rest of their careers just because they were fascists. That's unbecoming. All right, that's an interesting argument. But Jake, did you say when the Democratic Party said they were going to blacklist progressives? Anyone who worked against a Democratic incumbent, that it was outrageous and that you were shocked and chagrined? Nope, not a word. When you blacklist progressives, Jake Tapper and the entire mainstream media, they're there for it. They love it when you do it to their beloved establishment Republicans. all of a sudden they're heartbroken over it. You're just gonna do this over fascism? I mean, at least progressives are trying to help people. That's way worse, isn't it? Yeah, that's what I thought, Jake.
Yeah, look, one thing that I don't understand is how people think that this is not that big of a deal. That everyone accepts what the outcome of this election is, and that anything that you hear from Pompeo or from Trump is just nonsense. They're just making fools out of themselves. I don't know. I mean, the Trump administration threatened to do certain things, and then they ended up doing far worse. I mean, hysterectomies on immigrant women without their consent is just one example. These are horrible people who don't respect democracy at all. I'm not a person who likes fear mongering. I'm not someone who likes to scare the audience, but we're talking about someone who has authoritarian tendencies, Donald Trump, someone who talks about Kim Jong-un as if he's having some sort of extramarital affair with him. This guy is dangerous, and he's surrounded by right-wing enablers who are more than willing to quench his thirst for a dictatorship. It's just absolutely disgusting, and we should take it seriously because there are already ramifications to what the Trump administration is doing in refusing a peaceful transition of power. For instance, the transition should begin right now. There should be a release of resources to the Biden camp so they can begin, getting intelligence briefings and putting their ducks in a row to have this seamless transition, but that's not gonna happen. So let's go to that story. I wanna give you the details on it. Trump is refusing to concede. Trump is refusing to concede that he lost the election, and his transition appointee is essentially slow walking the transition process. Her name is Emily Murphy, and she is part of the transition process. She's part of the General Service Administration, which is a government agency tasked with ensuring that the transition is seamless and smooth. However, Murphy, a Trump appointee, is refusing to sign a letter allowing President-elect Joe Biden's transition team to formally begin its work this week. In another sign, the incumbent president has not acknowledged Biden's victory and could disrupt the transfer of power. Signing the paperwork when a new president is elected triggers the release of millions of dollars in transition funding and allows an incoming administration access to current government officials. So this is a big deal. I mean, what does this mean for when Biden is finally inaugurated? Is he gonna be prepared? And the more Emily Murphy postpones this based on what her boss tells her to do, which is incredibly undemocratic, the more we're gonna run into issues later on in January. Chris Little, Trump's deputy chief of staff for policy coordination, has been working on transition preparations for the past several weeks, but he says everything is frozen right now. They're not doing anything, a source familiar with his work says. And to make matters worse, as you know, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo earlier today essentially says that he believes that there will be a smooth transition of power to a second term for Donald Trump. So that's what we're dealing with.
Corn Shuckle in our members section wrote in, so all these Republicans are arguing that the ballots that delivered them congressional wins were illegal, right? That's a great point. So she's not certifying the elections at the presidential level. So why aren't any of the states certifying the Republican wins? The Republican Party is saying that there was fraud. So take all those congressional and Senate wins away from the Republicans. I'm not kidding. See, that's what Democrats don't know how to fight, man. How many times have you guys heard me say this? They never, ever learn any lessons. You know what the Senate Democrats did today? They reappointed every single leader they have to every single position. So Chuck Schumer's back to being the leader for the Democrats. I almost said majority leader, but they didn't win the majority because of Chuck Schumer. Dick Durbin's back to being number 2. Joe Manchin's back. They're all back. Mark Warner, huge corporate Democrat, he's back. Learned 0 lessons. Now here's how you actually fight. You say, okay, that's it. If Trump is saying that the fraud votes were illegal, well, he said don't count the illegal votes. No problem. We're not counting the illegal votes. Get out of Congress. Get out. Get out. All you senators that you think you won, no, Susan Collins, get the hell out. You didn't win. You didn't win. Trump said it was all illegal. Your entire party is saying that the entire election was fraudulent. Why would we sit you in your seat? No, you're banned from the Senate. We now run the Senate and you're banned. See, now that would get people to go, oh yeah, wait a minute, Corn Shuckle might be right. But nope, Democrats, no fight at all. No fight within the party, By the way, I'll criticize the progressives in the Senate, all 3 of them, 4 of them. Why are you reelecting Chuck Schumer? How many losses can he have before you go, hey, you know what? Maybe we should just try someone else. Doesn't even have to be a progressive. Just pick a rando, anyone but Schumer. Nope, not a peep. No fight there, no fight from the Democrats, no fight anywhere but here. Okay, yes. So Republicans, come and get some. We got the real fight here. I don't think they should sit any of the Republican senators. Certainly not the ones that won in any of the states that are being disputed, and none of the congressmen. All the Republican congressmen from Pennsylvania, Nevada, Georgia, Arizona, you're gone. You're gone. We're not sitting here. We're not the ones saying the election is fraudulent. You're the ones saying it. So you're all gone and banned from the building. What are you going to do now?
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, we have more news for you, including what Cenk just referred to. Chuck Schumer did get reelected by Senate Democrats to serve as the minority leader, or we'll see how Georgia plays out. But we'll give you the details on that and more when we return.
We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of On the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be, featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity. The UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, you must unlearn what you have learned. And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFTR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
All right, back on the Young Turks. Look, I'm full of a good deal of passion and rage today over the situation with Trump and the Republicans and the Democrats. But we're gonna lighten it up a lot next Tuesday. That's a week from now. We're gonna start. We're gonna do a special called Dr. Cenk. Okay. Now, if you watch on any regular day when I'm doing the news, it might be hard to believe, but I'm actually in my personal life extraordinarily happy, and I want to teach you guys how you could do that. I know it's crazy, right? Well, watch, see what happens, and nothing to do with politics. We're going to totally lighten it up, personal life, and what I want you to do is send videos asking me questions at go@tyt.com. Okay, so and then I will answer. It's not political, guys. So, hey, I got this issue in my life as a possibility in a video, and what do you think? Or, hey, how do I do X or Y? How do I feel better about this? How do I feel happy about that? Whatever you got, send it over to me, and Dr. Cenk will answer it. It's gonna be 3 hours. Is it crazy? Yes. Is it fun? Definitely. So make sure you check that out. Okay, so speaking of fun, you know what's super fun? tyt.com/go. So let's check out the thermometer and see how we're feeling. 58,437. Okay, well, we're a little bit at a time, brothers and sisters. I love you for it. Let's see if we can get 59,000 by the next break. All right, speaking of brothers and sisters, let's go to our member section. Vicky says, wow, thanks TYT for the conversation with KJ Brooks. I'm following her posts now, expecting some great things from her. I love to hear that. You know, the conversation is our interview show, and it starts at 5:30 p.m. Eastern, right before the Young Turks. Jody R says, if Republicans no longer believe in our election system, then they shouldn't bother to vote in Georgia for the Senate runoff in January. And they can also stay home in 2022. End of discussion. Yeah, if you think it's not worth the paper that it's kind of printed on, then don't go. Don't vote in Georgia. You don't need to. It's all good, right? Doesn't matter. Anyway, Zachary Huddleston on YouTube Super Chat says, thank you, Cenk, Anna, and everyone at TYT. You give voice to my rage, and I don't feel constantly gaslit. I'm a proud member. Keep being awesome. Thank you, Zachary. We appreciate it. And speaking of members, here's subs on Twitch. The Lord Donut, new, and it's a Prime subscription. So if you have Amazon Prime, it's free for you, and we get the revenue anyway. It's a huge win-win on Twitch. Vengeful 1977, 5 months with Prime. Aquate 85, Trema FM at tier 2, thank you. And Nata Billionaire, oh wow, all right. And did it with Prime anyway. That's how you became a billionaire, I guess. Saving money like that and making wise decisions. All right, Casper, what's next?
All right. While Joe Biden gives flowery speeches about working with Republicans, they're shivving him when he's not looking. In fact, Mitch McConnell on the Senate floor today refused to accept the results of the general election. Take a look.
And then there's the presidential race. Obviously, no states have yet certified their election results. We have at least 1 or 2 states that are already on track for a recount. And I believe the president may have legal challenges underway in at least 5 states. The core principle here is not complicated. In the United States of America, all legal ballots must be counted. Any illegal ballots must not be counted. The process should be transparent or observable by all sides, and the courts are here to work through concerns. And President Trump is 100% within his rights to look into allegations of irregularities and weigh his legal options.
So there you have it. The Senate Majority Leader essentially enabling Donald Trump's absolute lies and conspiracy theories about the election. The Trump campaign has failed to win a single court battle. They failed to provide any legitimate evidence of widespread voter fraud. Instead, they're just wasting everyone's time, wasting everyone's resources with this nonsense. And I wonder if Joe Biden's taking note of any of this. Because again, I'm personally not interested in hearing about how we need to work together and come together. These are people who do not respect our democratic process. What makes Joe Biden think that these are people who are going to respect him and the policies that Democrats claim they want to work on and push through? It makes absolutely no sense. None.
Yeah. So is Joe Biden still promising to work with Republicans instead of progressives?
Yeah.
So because the Republicans just told you they don't even think you're president. They don't even think you won. They don't even care about democracy. They don't care about a peaceful transfer of power. When Trump said he wasn't going to do a peaceful transfer, people were like, oh yeah, that's funny. I mean, he doesn't really mean it. No, it turns out he does mean it. And they're like, yeah, but it doesn't matter because the Republicans won't go along with it. Well, nope, it turns out the Republicans will go along with it. That's their leader in the Senate right there, Mitch McConnell. So there's no disputing it anymore. As I said earlier in the show, there's 4 Republicans who disagree: Mitt Romney, Susan Collins, Murkowski, and Ben Sass. Outside of them, every Republican senator is going along with this fiction, and a thing that they know with great certainty is a lie, that there was fraud in this election. And so, and if you notice, here's how you can tell. Mitch McConnell was lawyerly. He had a conversation with Bill Barr on Monday morning. That's the Attorney General. Why is the Attorney General meeting with the Majority Leader in the Senate? It's because they're making a decision on what they're going to do about Trump. And what they decided was, no, we're going to let the baby keep on crying, and we're all going to delegitimize elections going forward because it doesn't matter. We can't win a national election anymore. We couldn't get any more Republicans voters to turn out than we did in the year 2020, and we still lost by 5 million votes. So there's no downside to delegitimizing, trying to destroy democracy. Meanwhile, Joe Biden says, I want to work with those guys. Progressives, oh no, you guys socialists, I don't want to work with you guys. The main lesson of this election is don't work with progressives, work with Mitch McConnell, who says you're not even president. Maybe progressives should try the same thing. If AOC comes out and says, I don't think Joe Biden's president, she'd get everybody's attention. And then all of a sudden, maybe the centrist Democrats would start kissing her ass. Because they do it to McConnell. Oh, please, Mitch, please. No. Slap him around a little bit politically. So like I said in the last segment, why aren't Democrats saying, hey, whoa, you think it's a fraudulent election? Everybody in the Republican delegation in Pennsylvania, get out right now. We didn't say it was a fraudulent election. You said it was. Every Republican in the House, now that's back to Nancy Pelosi, every Republican in the House, that's from Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, get up and get out. Otherwise, you have to come up here and say there was no fraud in your election. If you say there was fraud, get out. If you say there's no fraud, well then say it publicly. But the Democrats have no fight in them. No fight in them.
Well, their take, Cenk, is, well, if we engage in this debate, it legitimizes the debate. It legitimizes the claims that Trump's camp is making, the claims that Republican lawmakers are making. And so Biden has been clear in trying to avoid engaging in this in any way, shape, or form. But ignoring this issue doesn't just make it magically go away. The Trump administration is already taking actions to prevent the peaceful transition of power. The government agency that's tasked with triggering the actual transition, which would release millions of dollars in transition funding to the Biden camp, that's already having an effect on what Biden can do to prepare for a peaceful transition of power. Trump and his cronies aren't kidding, and unfortunately, the reaction that we're getting from Democrats is don't legitimize it, just don't respond to it, don't talk about it, it's not a thing. But it is a thing, and it's not gonna magically go away if you ignore it.
Anna, that's literally exactly what they said about Trump during 2016.
I know.
Oh no, ignore Trump, he'll go away. And did it look like he went away? No, all you're doing is letting it fester, okay? No, you gotta fight back. By the way, now, I hit the Democrats for being weak, which is a fact, given the situation. Oh, okay, Mitch, please work with us. Oh, that's so sad, God. But now how about the Republicans? You know, one of the reasons why Mitch McConnell's doing this? Because Donald Trump threatened to talk against the Republican candidates in Georgia for the Senate seat. He threatened mean tweets of them, mean tweets. And so they both said, okay, fine. I'm so sorry, sir. I beg of you, sir, because the cowards that Loeffler and Perdue are. And they immediately went on their knees and started sniveling to Donald Trump. Please don't send a tweet. Alpha males, tough guy Republicans, hilarious, total weakling cowards. And Mitch McConnell then goes, okay, all right, here we go. Yes, let's pretend that this election is not legitimate. And in order to protect our candidates in Georgia, otherwise, remember, Trump is a Republican. I mean, I have to remind you of that. Trump is holding Republican Senate candidates hostage to get the Republican senators to do his bidding, and it's totally working.
Yes.
And Mitch McConnell, I thought you were a tough guy. What happened? All of a sudden, Mitch McConnell's a coward who's bowing down to Donald Trump even after Trump lost power. That's the kind of weakling Mitch McConnell is.
I also want to just read a few, statements from Marco Rubio, who loves to bring up the fact that he would do anything to prevent an authoritarian regime in the United States similar to what Cuba is experiencing. He says the following: Senator Marco Rubio stood by the president's right to pursue legal challenges. Oh, really? Well, I mean, if you want to live under an authoritarian regime, why don't you just go back to your country of origin, take your family with you?
Yeah.
Right?
No, but guys, I want you to understand this. They already had their legal challenges. They went to court, they lost in every case. So this thing of like, oh, I'm hiding behind legal challenges, as if there's legitimacy to it. You've already lost every legal challenge. There's nothing left. There's nothing left but fantasy. And Marco Rubio is like, oh, a dictator wants to take over? Oh, this is the thing I pretend to be against the whole time. Oh, it's my dictator. Of course, yes, sir, yes, sir. Soon you'll be doing this as a sign for Trump. Isn't it amazing? And this is, guys, this is what's part of making me angry today and filled with just contempt for everyone in Washington. This little baby, Donald Trump, he lost the election by 5 million votes. He lost Georgia. He didn't just lose Pennsylvania and Arizona, but he lost Arizona, that was a Republican state. He lost Georgia, right? Lost completely. And he's still bullying all of Washington. Imagine how pathetically weak these servile little politicians are. We should bully them instead.
And real quick, Cenk, since you mentioned Trump's threats, I wanted to give you the detailed information from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. It was a brazen effort to appease Trump, who falsely claimed electoral fraud despite no evidence of any wrongdoing, as he and his supporters tried to discredit Biden. We're told the president and his top allies pressured the 2 Republican senators to take this step lest he tweet a negative word about them and risk divorcing them from his base ahead of the consequential runoff.
Well, you let them.
Spineless, feckless, absolute losers. Leaders lead. People who are elected to represent the American people should represent the best interests of the American people and uphold our democratic process. These 2 individuals do not deserve any form of leadership because they have no interest in being leaders. They're self-interested, feckless losers who absolutely should be voted out of office. So get out the vote in Georgia, get these 2 out of there, because all it takes is a threat from a child like Donald Trump for them to immediately tuck tail and do what he wants them to do. It's pathetic. So sad.
Look, I love standing up to bullies. Man, if they had any Democratic elected officials with a spine, you just go and obliterate this guy. Hey, little baby, are you still crying? You lost all your court cases and were all lies. Are you still crying, little baby? No, we have to be civil as the fascists continue to try to subvert democracy. He already fired the defense secretary. Now he's moving on to firing the generals, Trump is. So what happens if he fires all the generals? He's got 70 days. And then the new generals, who are Rudy Giuliani and his brother, say, oh yeah, we're staying. No, look, I don't think it's gonna happen, but I don't wanna take a 1% chance. But the Republican senators don't mind playing with democracy at all. And the Democrats, as usual, sit on the sidelines and do nothing.
All right, well, let's talk about why Joe Manchin is trash, because he is, and I'll tell you why. So, Joe Manchin, who apparently made a mistake by registering as a Democrat and is actually a pretty hardcore Republican, had an interview with Fox News where he tried to calm everyone's nerves, everyone on the right who is concerned about the Senate being broken up 50-50 between Democrats and Republicans should Republican candidates win in the runoff elections in Georgia. Now, how did he calm people's nerves? Well, he did it by ensuring that he will be an obstacle to the policies the Democratic Party wants to pass. Take a look.
It looks like those 2 races could be the control of the US Senate, with a tie then going to Vice President Harris. What do you tell people about that and concern about that, considering all we've heard about the progressive agenda?
Well, there's a lot of people that are concerned. There's a lot of fear tactics are being used right now, Brett. If both of the Georgia senators were elected from the Democratic Party, then that would be 50-50 if both Dan Sullivan and Tom Tillis win. 50-50 means there's a tie. But if one senator does not vote on a Democratic side, there is no tie and there is no bill. So I commit to you tonight, and I commit to all of your viewers and everyone else that's watching, I want to lay those fears, I want to rest those fears for you right now, because when they talk about whether it be packing the courts or ending the filibuster, I will not vote to do that. I will not vote to pack the courts, I think, and I will not vote to end the filibuster.
Trash.
So the Republicans just ended the filibuster on Supreme Court nominees. That's why they got Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett in. And Joe Manchin is still pretending as if there's rules in the Senate and etiquette in the Senate, and as if the Republicans are the good guys, and that Democrats would be the bad guys if they ended the filibuster. Without ever mentioning in the interview on Fox News, it was the Republicans who killed the filibuster already on the single most important thing the Senate does. So look, I know what the Democratic case is for supporting Joe Manchin. Hey, he's in the caucus, and on some procedural votes, he's with us, and those procedural votes are important. And half the time on substantive votes, he's with us, but on that half, we don't need his vote anyway. So really, procedural things are their main excuse for supporting Joe Manchin. But wait a minute, he just screwed you on procedures right there, saying even if the Democrats pick up the 2 seats in Georgia, I will not let them pass anything. because I'll let the Republicans filibuster, in which case we don't need 50 senators, we need 60 senators. He just killed the entire Democratic agenda by himself, and you told me that you needed him for procedural matters. That's hilarious. And anytime you need him on a substantive policy issue, he votes with the Republicans. So maybe you could find one or two exceptions here and there. By the way, he voted for Brett Kavanaugh. But even if you find one or two exceptions, let me ask you something. Is that worth it? So what's the price? Well, the price is, here you have a prominent Democratic senator that constantly comes out and makes the Republican case for them, making it seem rhetorically like Republicans are always right. Now that hurts the Democratic cause more than anything else in the country. He destroys the Republican brand, I'm sorry, the Democratic brand on behalf of the Republican Party every time he goes on television. You think that's worth a couple of procedural votes? And again, on the most important ones, he's against you anyway. There's almost never a case where Manchin will break a vote in favor of the Democrats. Certainly nothing that would justify the massive damage he does to the Democratic Party.
You know, Joe Manchin really stands out as a pretty conservative Democrat. But as I watched his full interview on Fox, I couldn't help but feel as though a lot of what he had to say is pretty mainstream in the Democratic Party at this point. I mean, he pretty soon won't be an anomaly within the Democratic Party. So to make my case, let's go to the next video where he elaborates on more of the ways in which he plans on being an obstacle for the party.
So I want to lay those fears to rest, that won't happen, because I will not be the 50th Democrat voting to end that filibuster or to basically stack the court. And then all the other things you're hearing about, Brett, also is defund the police. I don't know of any of the Democrats in the caucus that are for defunding the police. We're not for that whatsoever. And when they talk about basically Medicare for all, we can't even pay for Medicare for some. Doesn't make any sense at all. We've got to fix the Affordable Care Act we have, and I think our moderate Republicans will work with us.
So despite being very clear on how he plans on working against the Democratic Party in the Senate, there has been a decision to basically put him back in leadership positions. And I'll tell you what those leadership positions are. Manchin will serve another term as vice chair of the Democratic Policy and Communications Committee. Manchin could also chair the Energy and Natural Resources Committee in a 50-50 Senate, in which the tie goes to Democrats, thanks to Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, meaning now that she's going to be vice president, that basically opens up this, creates this situation in which you have a wannabe Democrat serving as the chair of this incredibly important committee.
So the Energy Committee, that's where he's gonna go coal, 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 oil, oil, oil. And he's vehemently against Green New Deal. So they would put the single most conservative Democrat, who is by far the most pro-fossil fuel Democrat, as the head of the Energy Committee, where they would decide issues on climate change. They put him in a leadership. It's not like, oh my God, Joe Manchin, he's such an outlier, I can't believe he agrees with the Republicans. They're like, yes, he agrees with the Republicans, let's put him back in charge. Did you hear what he was the vice chair of? Policy, the policy committee. So Joe Manchin, the Republican, comes up with policies for the Democratic Party, and communications. Well, that's what he's doing right there. He went on television saying Republicans are right. They're right about the filibuster. They're right about packing the courts. Republicans are always right. He is in leadership on communications for the Democratic Party. And then when we point out these enormously legitimate critique, everybody rushes in. Jay, don't split the party. Don't split the party. I mean, Joe Manchin's doing such a great job of being a Democrat, and he's going to kill Green New Deal and Medicare for all for us. Don't split the party. And they really say that with a straight face, because mainstream media has totally brainwashed them into thinking that the Democratic Party is Joe Manchin and his support over the top, 100% support for the Republican Party. We're not going to do Medicare for all. Pandemic. Look, I know that Joe Manchin's against Medicare for all. That's not a surprise. But what he's saying is, we're not even going to consider it. One last salt in the wounds, okay? There's a theory out there that the Democrats are playing three-dimensional chess. Laugh along with me. How many times have you heard this? Well, actually losing the Senate is three-dimensional chess for later losing again and again and again. I've never seen I don't know if they know how to play checkers, let alone three-dimensional chess. Okay, so here's this version of it. They say, no, we send Manchin to say that we agree with Republicans so that we can win the Georgia Senate seats. I'm not kidding. That is the number one excuse the Democratic Party is using right now. They're saying, well, in Georgia, they won't have to vote against our candidates. So if they think it's okay, the Democrats won't do anything they promised anyway, even if they win the Senate seat. So even if the Democrats win, don't worry, they're gonna agree with the Republicans, and that's why we'll win in Georgia. Yes, they're that painfully stupid. Please vote for Democrats so we can agree with Republicans. That's their strategy going into Georgia.
All right, we got to take a break. Let's do that when we come back. We have more news for you, including Chuck Schumer getting elected into Senate Minority Leader again. Is that a good thing, a bad thing? I'll give you the details when we return.
Bad thing.
At TYT, we frequently talk about all the ways that big tech companies are taking control of our online lives, constantly monitoring us and storing and selling our data. But that doesn't mean we have to let them. It's possible to stay anonymous online and hide your data from the prying eyes of big tech. And one of the best ways is with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN hides your IP address, making your activity more difficult to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network data to protect you from eavesdroppers and cyber criminals. And it's also easy to install. A single mouse click protects all your devices. But listen, guys, this is important. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by CNET and Wired magazine. So take back control of your life online and secure your data with a top VPN solution available, ExpressVPN. And if you go to expressvpn.com/TYT, you can get 3 extra months for free with this exclusive link just for TYT fans. That's expressvpn.com/TYT. Check it out today.
All right, back on the Young Turks. I want to tell you something really simple. You can save the planet by going to tyt.com/trees. That's it. Go check it out. You'll see the rest. tyt.com/trees. And then obviously we're doing our campaign. There it is. It's not complicated. That one's really easy. Okay, we're doing our campaign. We were trying to get to 59,000. We got a thermometer update here on tyt.com/go. We didn't get there, 58,824. Let's try one more time. Go. If you say it that way, it might work. All right, wonderful comments here. I want to get to them. A Bucket of Dragons writes in, I read Cenk's opinion piece in the Wall Street Journal, and I completely agree that we can't overlook the incompetence of the third-rate establishment Democrats. We're going to talk about that in a second. AZ Progressive says Amy McGrath's massive loss alone should have disqualified Schumer from leading the Democrats. Great point. Mar B says, how do any of these Democrats say Bernie's not a real Democrat, but let Manchin stay in the party? Overwhelming and indisputable point. And Cole Chambers with another great point on Super Chat. My senators in Georgia were fine with Brian Kemp running his own election as Secretary of State. I don't want to hear it. So true. And last one is Stephen Garcia on Super Chat, old friend Stephen Garcia. Thank you for your AOC coverage yesterday, both supporting her but also calling out lack of Cori Bush support and calling for a floor vote showed true objectivity from a team that helped to get her in power. This is why I am TYT. And I say old friend because Stephen Garcia has been a member and a great supporter of all of those candidates and all of the causes. And it's been great doing this show with you, brother, for all this time. And that's our job. Our job is to be honest and hold everyone accountable. All right, Anna.
While Democrats so far have failed to take control of the Senate, and remember that the House has lost several House seats, the Democratic Party has decided that they are going to go with the same leadership that failed them in this election, including Chuck Schumer, who was reelected as the Senate Minority Leader. Senate Democrats on Tuesday morning reelected Schumer as Senate Minority Leader along with the rest of his leadership team, including Senator Dick Durbin, who will serve another term as Senate Minority Whip, and Senator Patty Murray, an assistant Democratic leader. And by the way, Schumer did get a glowing review from Joe Manchin, a pretend Democrat, who said, there's nobody who works harder than Chuck. There's nobody who tries to listen to more people than Chuck. Manchin said after the meeting, adding that there was no dissent expressed to Schumer, leading the Democratic conference another 2 more years.
Well, that's a failing, honestly, of everyone in that conference, including Bernie Sanders, including Elizabeth Warren, including Merkley and Markey. Progressives helped Ed Markey win that seat in Massachusetts. You think Chuck Schumer did a good job? I don't care that you're friends with him. I don't care at all. In fact, I think it's counterproductive that you're friends with him. So that's why you never stand up to him. And so you put your friendship with Chuck Schumer over the priorities of your voters. How many elections are you gonna let Chuck Schumer lose? Now we can't pass anything in the Senate because of Chuck Schumer. He blew it, How much did Amy McGrath lose by? One of our voters pointed that out. AZ Progressive says on the Amy McGrath loss alone, why would we ever put Schumer in? He said, don't worry, I got this. You progressives, we're not gonna have your candidate. We're gonna put in $40 million in the primaries. Amy McGrath had $43 million in the primaries because we're sure that the corporate Democrat wannabe Republican is the better way to go. How'd that work out, Chuck? Did anyone in that Democratic caucus ask him, how'd that work out, Chuck? And then you could put us a bunch of corporate Democrats in all the other races, and almost all of them lost. Susan Collins won by 8 points. There was a Justice Democrat in that primary in Maine. No, can't have it. Sarah Gideon, she's gonna win. She's such a good corporate Democrat. She takes all the money, and that's gonna help her win. Really? It didn't. Are there ever going to be any consequences for failure? So what was the first thing they did after leadership failed again? Blame progressives. Yeah. They said, oh, socialism, defund the police. And it's just so callous and so sick. So by the way, I wrote a Wall Street Journal editorial about this. We'll put in the link down below in the description box if you're watching this later on YouTube or Facebook. And I want you to read it. And it was one of the most popular articles in all the Wall Street Journal, honestly. And I don't say that to brag. I say that because you give a drop of progressive opinion anywhere, even at the Wall Street Journal, and people are like, yes, why come nobody's ever said that before? Wait a minute, that's true, they did. They were supposed to pick up a lot of seats in the House. They lost seats in the House. They were supposed to pick up all these seats in the Senate. Schumer couldn't pick up 3 seats. He couldn't pick up 3 seats in a historic election against a buffoonish president in the middle of the worst pandemic, and America reacting and having the worst amount of cases, the worst amount of deaths, etc. No amount of Republican failure can get Chuck Schumer to win elections. Unanimously put back into a leadership position. Dick Durbin, his incredibly weak and ineffectual right-hand man, put right back in as a second person in charge. Everybody's back. The same gang that has lost election after election after election is back. They're back in the House, they're back in the Senate, and they're back to their old tricks. Oh, we lost? Screw 'em. Progressives, socialism. And everyone in corporate media is like, yes, sir. It is not Chuck Schumer's fault, sir. It is not Nancy Pelosi's fault. It must be those no good rascals, the progressives. They say all this with a straight face. It's alternative facts. It's a lie just as much as anything Donald Trump has ever said.
Yeah, and I want to remind everyone that Chuck Schumer helped to fast track several of Donald Trump's judicial nominees. Schumer reached an agreement with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to fast track the confirmation of 15 Trump-nominated judicial picks. 7 federal district court judges were confirmed that day, and 8 were put on the docket for confirmation the following week. So that's the kind of Democratic leader Chuck Schumer has been. And I'm getting some word that he is supportive of some FDR type policies, but what does that matter when you have someone like Joe Manchin, who has like glowing reviews for Schumer, saying very clearly that he will serve as an obstacle for the types of policies the Democratic Party wants. And honestly, Chuck Schumer, give me a minute. Chuck Schumer, I think, is more afraid of a challenger in the future than anything else. He might talk the talk a little bit, kind of, but I don't think he's actually gonna fight aggressively for the policies that we desperately need, including FDR type economic policies.
100%. Thank you, Anna. I was gonna say the same thing, but I'll add on to it. How come Chuck Schumer never pushed FDR-like policies before? How come he never talked about any of the priorities that he's talking about now? He's talking about now maybe ending student debt with an executive order that Biden can do that. He's going to encourage him to do that. How come he never did that for 8 years with Obama? That's because he doesn't believe it. He's now worried that AOC might run for a seat in New York. And all of a sudden, look at that, Chuck Schumer finds religion. Now, did he actually find religion? Hell no. If he passes all those things, hats off, then don't run against him. I'm super happy to have him. I don't care how much he lied in the past. I don't care how conservative he was in the past. I don't care how weak he was in the past. You pass things, Chuck Schumer. You win elections. You pass bills. I give you all the credit in the world. But you haven't passed anything, ever. Hey, be fair. When we had a super majority that was filibuster proof, we passed Romney Care. Wow, I didn't know you were gonna roll that tough, Chuck. So don't believe a word of what Chuck Schumer is saying. And besides which, put up or shut up. And the reality is, of course, you're not allowed to say that in American media. You say that in American media, you get banned. Chuck Schumer must be protected. No, he has never won at anything. And if the Democrats unanimously thought he was a great leader, then there's something deeply wrong with them.
So we have just a few more minutes left, but we have a lot of stories that we want to get to in the postgame today. So after the main show, we're going to go to Old School, an episode of Old School, and then following that, we'll have our members-only postgame, where we'll talk about what Donald Trump is planning on doing or has been doing in regard to sanctions toward Iran in order to make it incredibly difficult for Biden to essentially go back to the Iran nuclear deal. So we'll do some foreign policy, and we have other news as well as an update on the migrant children who we're still having difficulty finding the parents of.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to the rage on those stories too. And look, members make this show possible. That's why, if you're wondering why we have a post game where we do all those extra stories for the members and they get all of them first, that's because we couldn't do any of this show without members. So please hit the join button below if you're watching on YouTube. Become a member on Twitch, and for you guys, you could almost do it for free if you've got Amazon Prime, and tyt.com/join for everyone else. We'll see you there in a minute. Thanks for listening to the full episode of the Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.